cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio once again with your host Nick Bernabe here on ucy.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. I'm really happy to be back, and we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff tonight. I've got my partner in crime here in the studio with me, SM Gibson. What's up, dude?
What's up? What's going on? Still getting over that WrestleMania, Trumpomania from last night, I guess.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that tonight because, we've been doing some more philosophical stuff on this show, and so we're gonna do a little bit of news tonight because, there is a lot of news. How many stories have we gotten up on the antimedia.org homepage of the independent media recently?
It's right around 70 today, I think.
70 stories today. We're averaging like 70 stories a day. So today's Wednesday. We've had over 200 stories on the homepage since Monday. So hopefully everyone's out there enjoying that because, we're doing a lot of work all day long. Me and SM Gibson here hunting down stories, publishing original articles, and just trying to find news articles that matter to you and also to the people that are helping us find the news. Thank you very much, and hopefully everybody else out there listening joins in. And the My News section on the antimedia.org is where you could publish links and you can get the stuff that you care about on our homepage. All you gotta do is create an account. Anyway, that being said, let's talk about some of this news stuff because that speech last night was, just listening to it casually, it was like, okay, more and more of this Trump bullshit. He's still acting like he's running for president, blah, 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 blah. Two things stood out to me, though. Two things. Firstly, let's talk about how the media is now gushing over Donald Trump. Even CNN, what was CNN saying?
Dan Jones says that he's finally president.
Yeah, and CNN is like, oh, presidential Trump finally, he's come around the corner and now he's blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, now what was it that made them say that? Well, as for Van Jones, who used to be, wasn't he part of the Obama administration at a certain point?
Briefly, yeah.
Van Jones, he's a pretty prominent guy over there in the Democratic Party. He shielded for Hillary Clinton and, all that good stuff that you would expect out of any good Democrat. What is it that made Trump presidential, according to Van Jones? The fact that he used a dead Navy SEAL as a political prop last night in the speech. And he pointed out the guy's wife, and the wife is there, and she's all emotional. And never mind the fact that the dad of the dead Navy SEAL has asked to not use his son as a political tool. Never mind that.
And for an investigation into what actually happened.
Called for an investigation into what actually happened. And the other thing is that what they don't tell you is that they killed a bunch of civilians. They killed a bunch of civilians. What was it, like 30 civilians or something? There was an 8-year-old girl who was the daughter.
9 children?
Yeah, 9 children. There was an 8-year-old girl that was the daughter of Anwar al-Awlaki, who was an American citizen. And the girl was presumably as well a U.S. citizen. She was killed in the raid. That you don't really hear that. Botched raid. We lost an aircraft in it. They say that they were targeting Al-Qaeda. That is probably not true because Al-Qaeda criticizes ISIS for having women and children around them. Al-Qaeda doesn't have women and children around. If 30 civilians were killed, they probably raided the wrong place or they were doing something else other than what they've stated they were doing. So apparently that makes Donald Trump presidential. Now we all know that foreign policy issues are bipartisan. They oppose Trump on some domestic issues and a lot of like the social stuff. And of course he's being opposed on like the immigration front and that kind of thing. But we got to remember, foreign policy is bipartisan. Obama carried on Bush's policies. Trump is going to carry on Obama's policies, whether he wants to or not.
One thing we noticed last night that was important is, Trump could say pretty much anything, and the Democrats were sitting there and not applauding. I know Alex Jones and a couple other people in media today were making a big deal out of the fact that there were Democrats not applauding for jobs, and there were Democrats not applauding for basic stuff just because it was coming out of Donald Trump. But if you notice, and here's what's important, anytime he mentioned going overseas and starting conflict, they would stand up. And of course, it's under the guise of national security, but why is that where you draw your line? That's what you celebrate. That's what you're going to applaud. When, you literally have people giving the thumbs down sign at Trump that kind of gasps at some of the things that he said, but they certainly applauded his, we're going to go over and take care of business when it comes to foreign policy.
He brought up the fact that he basically ordered a raid that wound up killing one American guy, a soldier, killed who knows how many American innocent civilians. We know at least one 8-year-old girl. 30 other innocent civilians. He said that, and he got a standing ovation. He got a standing ovation for talking about how he killed a guy.
And I will say this, and this is what we stress on our shows on Tuesday and Thursday, and I know Nick stresses it on Monday and Wednesday, and it's just something we stress at Anti-Media, is that this raid was actually ordered when Obama was still in office. This isn't something that came out of Donald Trump's mind. This is something that came from the previous administration, was carried out under Trump. Now, you definitely have to fault Trump because he didn't do anything to stop it. It definitely came under his watch, but he had been in there for a week. This had come mainly from the previous administration and carried out under Trump. This goes to show you that there's really no difference in how barbaric our foreign policy is, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, or Nobel Peace Prize winner or a racist. It's the same thing.
That speech Trump gave is going to get him a Nobel Peace Prize, isn't it?
It should. I figured he already should have had one.
Yeah, because we just give them out ahead of time nowadays. But yeah, dude, this is very concerning, and the media, the way that they kind of gushed over this speech. And really, that was the only strong point. That was the only difference that he made, that was made from previous speeches and from like campaign speeches and stuff. The only difference was that he was celebrating the fact that he got a guy killed, and he got a bunch of other innocent people killed. And everybody, the media loves it. CNN loves it. Fox News loves it. MSNBC loves it. Van Jones loves it. Liberals love it. Democrats love it. Republicans, of course, they love it. So, it's pretty obvious now, dude. It's pretty obvious what we're seeing here. And what we're seeing is the war on terror, which, creates more terrorism, basically. the war of terror, the war to create terrorism, I guess would be a more accurate way to describe it, is very, very popular on both sides of the aisle. The Democrats stand up and give you a standing ovation when you talk about creating terrorists and killing people.
Well, they like John McCain now.
Yeah, John McCain is like somehow a hero of the Democratic establishment. It really blows your mind to see it happen. I mean, it's not surprising though. It's not. It really isn't. I mean, we know this stuff. As one of the few news outlets who has remained anti-partisan throughout the Obama administration and now into the Trump administration, doesn't make us very popular with our followers who have fallen for the allure of Donald Trump, but it makes it very interesting to observe this stuff from like an objective standpoint here, from like an external, from outside of the two-party system, and I guess we've developed a lot of followers on the right because of the fact that Obama was president, and we were critical of Obama throughout his entire throughout the entire time of our existence. So of course, because of that, we developed a following on the right, and of course, a lot of those people wound up supporting Trump, still support Trump, voted for Trump. But now, as an anti-partisan political, news organization, we're now going up against Donald Trump and the stuff that he's doing, just like with this thing in Yemen. And now we're getting pushback from our own followers because they're surprised that we're upholding our principles. Unlike a lot of people who we thought were part of this anti-partisan movement, who have now fallen into the kind of Donald Trump sympathizer bandwagon. We have principles, and we can't just compromise on them because Donald Trump is the president. That's not how any of this stuff works.
I think it's important to actually keep your eyes open during whoever is in charge and whoever the politician is, because in fairness, Donald Trump definitely catered to people that were fed up with the establishment. I mean, he went on Alex Jones and gave an interview, and Roger Stone was on there every single day. So I do understand where that allure comes from, but you have to kind of open your eyes and understand that this is just a show. This is just a charade.
Don't be Obama supporters, because that's what, unfortunately, I'm seeing a bunch of my friends now turning into Obama supporters that support Trump. Because look at it, Obama, Trump, they both capitalized on very similar movements. Sure, the demographics are a little different, but the rhetoric was very similar. Anti-establishment rhetoric. It works. That's what is popular right now. Everybody's fed up with all this shit. Everybody's fed up. They've been fed up since 2008. That's why Obama won. That's why Obama whooped Hillary Clinton's ass in 2008, and that's why Trump whooped Hillary Clinton's ass in 2016, because people are fed up with the same old shit. A lot of my friends that are now supporting Trump, who I thought were, maybe I thought they were libertarian or green or anarchist. I'm sorry to say it, but you guys are starting to sound and act a lot like Obama supporters by not opening your eyes and being critical of what Trump is doing. Trump has already done a lot of bad things. Trump has already gotten an 8-year-old child killed. Trump has not reined in the foreign policy. Trump has not done anything to take on ISIS. In fact, the stuff that he's done so far, which including the travel ban, and including that he's going to spend more money on the military, and especially including that he's now already working with the Saudis, Trump isn't going to fight ISIS. Trump is going to make ISIS stronger. Trump is going to make terrorism great again, even greater than it was under Obama. Trump is going to preside over the greatest reign of terrorism that we've seen so far, because the more you dump fuel onto that fire, the more troops you want to send over to the Middle East, the more bombs you send over to the Middle East, the more money you send over to the Middle East, the more arms you send over to the Middle East, the more terrorists are going to be created. The more you crack down domestically on Muslim people that are innocent people, that are not violent people, the more you crack down on Muslims and make Muslims out to be the bad guys, the more regular Muslims you radicalize and the more homegrown extremism you inspire. And that's what Trump is going to do. He's going to create more terrorism. So everybody that voted for Trump because he was going to make America safe again, you got duped. I'm sorry, but you got duped. And, you may not see it right now, but believe me, in the next 6 months, in the next year, you guys are going to look back. The people listening to this radio show, you're going to look back and you're going to say, you know what? Nick was right. Trump's policies are not going to make us safer. They're going to make us less safe. They're going to make us less safe because if you just look, do the research. Do it. Do the research. Find out what creates terrorism. Go look at it. Go look up blowback. I mean, do we gotta cite Ron Paul again? How many times do we gotta cite Ron Paul on this show because he's so brilliant on foreign policy? Ron Paul understands foreign policy. He understands what creates terrorism. He understands that the main reason why there's terrorists is because we're in all those countries knocking over governments. The only reason ISIS exists is because we knocked out Saddam Hussein. Trump knows that. Trump said that in the campaign trail, but what's Trump doing now? He's not doing the stuff that he said that we thought he was going to do. He's not. And I'm not surprised by it because politicians say a bunch of shit when they're trying to get elected, and then they do a bunch of shit that isn't may not be compatible with what they were saying when they were running for office. I mean, look back at Obama, look back at Bush. These guys were like the biggest anti-war presidents that we've had in a while, and look what Bush did. Look what Obama did. 8 countries, 9 countries, 10 countries they knocked over or started bombing. So Trump knows that knocking over governments over there in the Middle East is a bad idea.
Well, he said it over and over and over.
He knows it.
And he even, he's still saying it as of right now. And I think that's the thing with Trump is, first off, if he does, which so far what we've seen on the ground and policy-wise is very different than his rhetoric. We've seen his rhetoric still sounds good to me. He talked last night and said, we're not going to be nation building. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. And then he turns around and gives $54 billion increase to the military. And, we're broke. I know people don't understand that, but our country is absolutely broke. We're $20 trillion in debt.
$20 trillion.
And so an extra $54 billion is really not something we can spare, no matter what it's for. And the increase is actually 80% of Russia's entire yearly budget for their military. And that's just an increase on top of things. It's definitely an increase in military spending is definitely in favor of the special interest and the military industrial complex, unquestionably. So while I can sit there and go, yeah, Trump's saying, oh, he's not going to do this, he's not going to do that, you have to look at their actions. It's just like Obama. Obama said some good stuff, but you had to look at his actions. And we're seeing the exact same thing right now. We can't judge a president based on their rhetoric, because if you did, then Obama would have been a great president. But then if you look at what his actions were, they were nothing at all like what he actually did. And so far, that's what we're seeing with Trump, I think.
Yeah, talking out of both sides of his mouth. I mean, how can you sit there and say, we've got too much wasteful spending on the military overseas, and then a second later say we're going to add $54 billion to that budget? Like, we're already blowing the budget as it is. We've got a bigger military budget than the next, 8 biggest military spenders combined. I mean, the amount of increase, the $54 billion increase that's going to be added to the $600 billion, that $54 billion is bigger than all of what Russia spends.
80% of what Russia spends.
Yeah, it's so, what we're talking about here is just a huge amount of money that is unneeded. Our military isn't in shambles. It doesn't need to be rebuilt. We've got how many aircraft carriers? The next biggest country, I think, is Italy with their 3 aircraft carriers.
If people want to fix our military, guess what? This is how we do it. We don't have them spread out all over the world, period. It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're playing a board game or you're in war and you're a general. Once you spread everything out, you've worn yourself thin. If you really want to rebuild our military and revitalize our military, bring them home, bring the soldiers home, bring the troops home. Let's not be scattered all around the world. if you want a strong defense, well, bring those troops here and let's have a strong defense. Don't be out policing the world. And there's a complete difference between, look, when has the government ever just thrown money at something and it was just magically fixed? It was just magically better. It doesn't work that way. We see the government over every kind of different policy in the world you can imagine. They throw money at something, and what happens? What's the result? Wasted money. Even Trump admitted it in his debates with Hillary when he was admitting that he didn't pay taxes, and she made some comment, well, if you would have paid taxes, we could have done blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yeah, well, you would have squandered that too. Guess what? He was right. They would have squandered that money. So throwing an extra $54 billion at the military is not going to fix, solve, or keep you safer in any way, shape, or form. We have to have a drastically different policy. We have to have a drastically different approach to how we go around having our influence throughout the world. The United States can have a very positive influence in the world. 100%. The United States does do a lot of things better than the rest of the world. But dropping bombs on people ain't gonna work. They're just gonna hate you, and it will create more terrorism. We saw it under Obama. We saw it under George Bush. People have to realize there is a consequence for their actions, and they have to get their heads out of the clouds and think that we're playing G.I. Joe and everything's just gonna work out. There is a consequence for everything that you cheer on.
Yeah, dude. And our big export right now is bombs. You know,
Oh, it 100% is.
Our big export is military goods. And, you know, Trump, the wheeler and dealer, he's going to increase our exports of military goods. I guarantee you that. If Obama did it, believe me, Trump is going to make that look like nothing compared to what Obama did.
Well, I will say, and I'm certainly in agreement with you, I think it's certainly feasible and more likely than not that he does, but he's got a long way to go. People don't realize the amount of weapons that Barack Obama sold, especially to the Saudis, like a lot. Over 100 billion, I think he sold to Saudi Arabia, like 110 or something like that. The exact number escapes me, but
Obama sold the Saudis enough weapons to take over half the damn world.
yeah,
It's ridiculous, dude. It's ridiculous.
115 million. I think it was something outrageous.
Yeah. So the media is in love with Donald Trump because he's killing people, and they like that. So there's the first thing. Liberal media, conservative media, CNN, they love Donald Trump now because he's killing people. That sounds crazy, right?
Well, no,
Sounds
it doesn't. It doesn't sound crazy at all. Because if you've gone into this election and gone into what politics have truly become, then that should be kind of expected. I think at some point Donald Trump's going to be beloved by most of this country. I think most of the pundits are going to end up being on his side in some way, shape, or form. And I think think about the Republicans right now. And this is going to, I don't know what's going to happen ultimately. But look at somebody like Paul Ryan or somebody like the establishment with Mitt Romney and the entire Republican establishment. They fought Donald Trump tooth and nail. They called him every name in the book. They did stuff that you never would have imagined that side of the Republican Party ever doing to attack him. And then all of a sudden, they all fell in line. They all fell in line with him. And I think we're going to see the same thing for the most part. It won't be 100%, of course. But I think you're going to generally see the same thing on the left, in the media especially.
Yeah. And, you know, we've been covering this kind of deep state war, right, that we've been observing here, where it seemed like maybe Trump was not trying to conform to the intelligence community and what, you know, basically the CIA and them telling him what to do, and it seemed like he wasn't going to conform. They sunk his guy, General Flynn. They knocked him out real quick, just like as a feat of strength, right? They showed, okay, look, Trump, if you don't want to get in line, we're going to start knocking out your people. They knocked out Flynn. He's gone. Now, the guy that comes in to replace Flynn, what's his name?
McMaster.
McMaster. This guy's like a deep state guy.
Yeah.
He's a neocon. The establishment loves this guy. Have you noticed that since he came in, there hasn't been any leaks? There's no more leaks. Where are all those leaks that were coming out last week against Trump? They're all gone. And then last night, now all of a sudden the media's in love with the guy. Trump, the ironing out of Donald Trump is, from what I could tell, it's complete. They've ironed him out. He's basically now a orange combed over version of Obama, and he's going to do what they tell him to do for the most part, and he'll get to tinker around with certain social issues. He's going to try to build his wall. He's going to get his, very, very visible deportation thing going on, which I don't know if it's even going to be much more extreme than what Obama was already doing. He's going to build a wall. There's already a wall there. Not much to that either. So basically, from what I can tell, Trump has been ironed out. He's going to be the orange version of Obama. Status quo. We're going to see a bunch of stuff going on. A bunch of countries going to continue being bombed. We're going to sell a bunch of arms to Saudi Arabia. We're going to protect Israel. Tensions are going to stay high between the U.S., Russia, and Iran. And that's basically the best we could hope for at this point with Trump. The worst case scenario is he starts a war with Iran, which triggers a war with Russia, and who knows what goes on with China and all that horrible stuff. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But that's just my observation. Of course, it's still early to tell what really is going to go on here. But that's what I can tell. The leak stopped. The media fell in love with him. It tells me the shift has happened.
I won't say that the media's in love with him yet, but there is a shift happening, 100%. And they're definitely walking down that path of just kind of rolling over for him. We're not there yet. There's going to be people that put up a resistance for a show. There's going to be people that go along with him for a show. Again, you have to remember that it's a show on both sides no matter what. This is about public perception. No matter who is in charge, no matter what is happening, everything is done for public perception. And it's whatever the goal is or whatever the agenda to be carried out is where they're going to steer what people are to believe. And if it is the case that Donald Trump's going to go along with some of this stuff, then they're going to, be a lot more lenient with him. I still personally think Trump is a gray area himself, but what we do see is, you're 100% right, Nick. We do see him being forced into a corner, especially with the whole Flynn thing. Forced into a corner, and now he's appearing that he's going to walk that neocon path that he ran against.
Yeah. So what you're going to see with Trump, I think, is you're going to see everything Obama was on most foreign policy things, except Trump is going to have that neocon slant to him, where it's like, oh, look how tough we are on immigration, and look how tough we are on this and that. Whereas with Obama deported 2.5 million people.
Obama did it and didn't want anybody to know he did it.
Obama deported 2.5 million people, didn't tell anybody about it. In fact, he told so few people about it that Trump was able to run on this myth that Obama was soft on immigration. Not true at all. Obama deported more people than any other president in U.S. history. So, Obama was so covert about his immigration deportations that Trump was actually able to run as if Obama was weak on immigration, and he wasn't. He was deporting more people than anyone else.
Obama, and again, we talked about Trump talking about the military. Look, he said our military is depleted, our military is weak, got to rebuild the military, yada, yada, yada. Barack Obama bombed at least 8 countries. Barack Obama was policing the world. He was doing nothing different than George W. Bush.
Yeah.
The military, where do people get that from? It's definitely a political talking point, especially by the right, that, Barack Obama did.
He let the military fall apart, and the military.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you're going to see is a similar, very, very similar policies, but except with Trump, they're going to be taking credit for this stuff. They're like, we deported 100,000 people this month, and we bombed 4 countries, and that's how cool we are because we're beating terrorism and we're kicking out illegal immigrants. And with Obama, it was like, we're doing all this stuff, we're just not telling you about it. What we are telling you about is how cool we are in gay marriage and how we're legalizing gay marriage and shit like that. And so all you're going to see is very similar policies, different rhetoric, right? Different treatment by the media. And so now you're going to see talking points coming from CNN where it's like, oh, look how cool it is that Trump is like bombing all these countries because like we're getting real tough on terrorism and stuff like that.
There's going to be pushback on him for a while. They gotta drag people into this. This is not going to be an overnight thing, but last night was certainly the beginning of walking down the path of
Please,
people on board of Donald Trump.
people, do not count on Huffington Post. Do not count on BuzzFeed. Do not count on Washington Post. Do not count on CNN to be the quote-unquote resistance. They are not. If you want to oppose the stuff Trump is about to do not count on these assholes. Looking over at CNN, they tweeted it out this morning with a screenshot of their homepage, their top headline. And we all know that CNN and Trump have been in a huge beef lately, right? Their top headline is just presidential Trump. And they talk about how he's going to do this ambitious vision and he's great at killing people.
He didn't say, he really didn't say anything different.
He didn't say nothing.
Here was the difference in that speech to me. As somebody that views it very politically, and as the sport and the chess game that it is, it was well written. It was a well written speech. It was worded differently than I've ever heard Donald Trump word anything. He clearly didn't write it himself. To me, he seemed like he was struggling staying with it because Trump's got the kind of personality that he wants to like just start going off and start ranting and start going down his path. And he was definitely on the chain of the script that he was given. But as far as the meat and the substance of it, it was a well-worded version of everything he's ever said.
It was a campaign speech.
There was nothing else in there.
It was a tamed-down campaign speech, and all of a sudden everyone's acting like, oh my God, he lays out this bold vision for the future. Really? I didn't hear it.
He said what he's always said. It was just worded differently.
Chris Cillizza, which has been one of the hugest anti-Trump people over at the Washington Post, gushing over Donald Trump, gushing over him. Go look at these tweets from this guy, Chris Cillizza. This is the guy that's been the Achilles heel of Donald Trump over at the Washington Post. And he's talking about how it was such an amazing moment when Trump talked about how he, got that Navy SEAL guy killed and his wife was all emotional. Right? Like, how is that amazing? Like, how is that amazing? You got a guy killed. And his wife is there in tears. How is that something positive? How is that positive, man? It really messes me up, dude. So what you're seeing here, especially from the Washington Post, the Washington Post is bloodthirsty. The Washington Post, keep in mind, we covered this about a month ago on the anti-media about how the Washington Post has this incestuous relationship with the CIA. So they're bloodthirsty. The Washington Post is like the bloodhound of the CIA at this point. And now that Trump is getting people killed, now all of a sudden you're going to see the Washington Post soften up and take a pro-Trump tone. The Washington Post is not a liberal newspaper. The Washington Post is a
establishment deep state
newspaper. It's not liberal by any means. I mean, sure, they're open-minded. Sure, they're open-minded about gay marriage and things like that. But Jesus, if you're not open-minded about that stuff by now, there's something wrong with you.
No, they're not any of that. What they are is they're talking. Look, they're a mouthpiece for the establishment. The Washington Post, this is what you need to know. If the Washington Post, and CNN especially, but especially, let me say this, especially the Washington Post, if they're saying that Trump's great all of a sudden, well, you need to consider the source. And you need to remember that all these months and all these years you said, I don't trust the Washington Post. They didn't overnight become this great thing or this thing that you accept. You have to then question, why are they saying this? What are they saying? And what's the reason they're saying it for? There's something else going on that we don't see behind the scenes, and it doesn't seem very good because the Washington Post is on his side. And let me tell you what the New York Times said. They came out and fact-checked Trump last night, okay? And they said that basically everything that comes out of his mouth, whether it's true or it's not true, because Trump is known to say stuff that's not true all the time. But sometimes he says stuff that's true and they say it's not true because that's the attack on him. But they came out this morning, New York Times said, we fact-checked him. It was all true. It was all true,
says the
From
New York
the New
Times.
York Times.
And then what was the one I got from the Independent? That 51 out of 61 statements he said were not true, or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, the New York Times is.
We're seeing the establishment, the powers that be, line themselves up behind Donald Trump.
Yeah, they're falling in line.
For whatever reason it is, people need to keep their eyes open.
Yeah.
They're lining up behind him to push something.
Like I said, Trump got smooth. I think he got smoothed out, and now he's fully aware of the situation and he's on board. So back to WAPO. And I know a lot of people listening to the show tonight are probably either Bernie Sanders supporters, former Bernie Sanders supporters, or at least think of Bernie Sanders as a decent politician, if there is such a thing. Looking back at the Washington Post coverage for the 2016 election, do you guys remember when the Washington Post ran 16 hit pieces against Bernie Sanders in 16 hours? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, man, and people were up in arms about this. So remember, Washington Post was trying to get Hillary Clinton elected.
Look, I repeat this to people, and I've beaten this horse dead, but the Washington Post literally ran a story that suggested that when Hillary Clinton collapsed on 9/11 this past year, she was poisoned by Russia. Do you understand how insane that is? Do you understand how make-believe that is? We're talking the Washington Post. At that moment, I said the National Enquirer is more trustworthy than this newspaper.
Yeah.
Period. I don't believe anything they say. I don't trust anything they say. And if they're lining up behind it, pay attention.
Yeah, and they sat there and called us.
They literally called us out.
They called us agents of Russia, Russian-funded propagandists.
Well, it's not true.
Now, I met with Putin earlier today. He was here in the office, and believe me, he told me that he's not funding our operation here. Anyway, Washington Post is a piece of shit, dude. Be wary. Be very wary. They are not the resistance. They are not a voice of dissent from Donald Trump. They have pretended like they were against Donald Trump only until he gets in line. Now that he's in line, believe me, you're going to see a shift. You're going to see them start treating Trump like they treated Obama.
You're never going to see that. That's never going to happen. He got a pass.
Okay, maybe not that soft, but similar stuff. Now, like I said, we're going to do news tonight. This is what bothered me the most about Trump's speech, is this voice program that he outlined about how they're going to start, quote, a voice to those who have been ignored by our media and silenced by special interests, basically a agency to publicize crimes committed by undocumented immigrants in the United States. Now, this kind of went under the radar. Again, the media kind of gushed over him, so they're not really talking about this. But this, to me, is very, very concerning. And, you know, we've talked about this several times in the past on the show about how immigrants are like the new scapegoat, and, you know, Muslims and refugees and, you know, undocumented immigrants from Mexico and Latin America have become scapegoats that the country is conveniently able to blame all of our problems on, instead of actually, you know, looking at our real problems and addressing them, which would be, you know, of course, more effective, but a lot harder to do, because we're talking about taking on maybe, you know, the Federal Reserve and things like that. But these are the kind of things that get politicians killed.
By the way, Mnuchin said, the new Secretary of Treasury, that we're just pretty much going to keep riding with the way we've done things with the Fed.
Yeah.
So anybody that before Trump got elected, oh, he's going to the Fed, he's going to do this. Guess what? Over. Ain't happening.
And Mnuchin, he's former Goldman Sachs too, and he makes movies. So Goldman Sachs, Hollywood, he's in Trump's cabinet. Everything that the people who claim to be anti-establishment hate. Anyway, this Voice program, which is Victims of Immigration Crime and Forced Engagement, this is very dangerous, man. They've been demagoguing against immigrants and refugees and kind of feeding into the xenophobia, which has been programmed into people since 9/11, especially. And what I find funny is that people who are like, oh, well, the media, blah, 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 they won't tell you how bad Muslims are and stuff. It's like, no, dude, you don't understand. You're not being edgy. You don't know knowledge that everyone else doesn't know by hating Muslims. In fact, you're just a victim of the propaganda. Propaganda isn't obvious. They're not. The New York Times is going to come out tomorrow and say, hey, look, we want you guys to dislike Muslims, but, and we're going to be obvious about it. No, that's not what they're going to do. After 9/11, there was a coordinated effort by everybody in the media, including New York Times, Washington Post, and everybody else, to dehumanize Muslims because they needed to lay the groundwork for us to go create this war on terror. The war on terror would never work if people knew that we were killing 1 million innocent Muslim people in Iraq. But because the media has successfully dehumanized Muslims since 9/11, nobody cares that we killed 1 million people in Iraq. 1 million people. How many died on 9/11? Less than 3,000? We killed 1 million people in Iraq since 9/11. And nobody really cares because they're Muslim. And the media dehumanized Muslims very effectively since 9/11. So people going around talking about, oh, the media doesn't want you to know how bad the refugees are. No, you're wrong. The media wanted you to think that. They pretend that they don't. And when Donald Trump says we're going to ban Muslims, the media comes, oh my God, he's going to ban Muslims. I can't believe it.
Now, what do you think, real quick, about the rumor going around that he's going to take Iraq off of the travel ban list? What do you make of that?
Well, maybe he's listening to his generals, because that was the dumbest one to add, because you can't be going into Iraq. I mean, Justin King laid this out on our show a few weeks ago. You can't ban travel from Iraq when you're waging war there, because
they're waging war in all these countries. Yeah. Syria, they're waging war. In Yemen, they're waging war. In Somalia, they're waging war.
And by banning travel from those countries, you make it a lot harder to wage war, because basically all of your translators and all of your people that you need on the ground to help you do what you're doing over there, when they get heat and they need to leave the country, where are they going to go? They got done helping America. Who's gonna let them in? And that's why it was so dumb militarily to ban travel from there. And that's probably why they're opening it back up, because the generals are probably like, dude, you got to let us take in Iraqis that we're using to help us translate and show us where ISIS is hiding out at and stuff. But who knows? Who knows what they're really doing over there? But this voice agency that he's creating is very dangerous, because it looks like what he's going to do is amplify any crime committed by anyone that's an immigrant. First of all, the facts are the facts. Immigrants commit crimes at a much lower rate than people who are natural-born U.S. citizens, and it makes perfect sense. If you're an immigrant, are you going to go, like, let's say I was an immigrant let's say I went to Germany, right? Because I said, you know what? My country where I'm from is no longer habitable. The economy sucks. There's a civil war going on. I'm going to move to Germany. You think I'm going to move to Germany and go around and start jacking people and beating people up and killing people and raping women and stuff like that? Or am I going to try to fit in? Am I going to try to get a job? And am I going to try to live? Because
you're running from chaos.
Yeah, if you think that a refugee is coming over here running for his life, trying to have a better life, and he's going to come over here and commit crimes so that we can catch him and deport him back home, you're an idiot. I'm sorry, but if you fall for that propaganda, I'm sorry, but you're a fool. Immigrants are not leaving their own countries to come do bad things. Sure, there probably are a handful of ISIS that have infiltrated the refugees and have snuck in. I'm not denying that. That's probably true. But the vast majority of immigrants and refugees are not coming and going anywhere to
But why
to commit
can't we
crime.
just look? But why can't we just address the problem in and of itself? These people don't want to be refugees. These people don't want to be fleeing their homes. And apparently, most Americans don't want them coming here. They don't want to be coming here, but they have to be. So, how do we solve this? What we do is we stop bombing and blowing these countries up. Americans don't have to worry about refugees coming in their country, and refugees don't have to exist because they don't have to be fleeing our bombs. It's really actually simple.
That almost sounds like it makes sense. You'd think that if someone was going to come in,
it's a win-win for everybody.
If somebody wanted to fix the refugee crisis, you'd think that they would take that into consideration. But instead, we're adding $54 billion to our military budget so we can have more bombs. So it looks to me like we're trying to make the refugee problem worse because we're going to go drop more bombs. So is Trump fixing the refugee crisis? No, he's not. He's going to make it worse. Is Trump going to fix terrorism? No, he's going to make it worse. More terrorism, more refugees, bad times. Bad times.
Just remember, tell me what the government has thrown money at and made it better. Can anybody tell me anything the government has thrown money at?
Well, they fixed healthcare, immigration,
it worked out great.
and retirement, Social Security. They fixed all that stuff, didn't they? Healthcare is great. Education is great. Social Security. I mean, we're all gonna have Social Security when we retire, right?
Yeah.
They fixed all that stuff. All
Super job, guys.
Here's an idea. Let's get the government out of those things, especially nation building. We don't even know how to build a nation here. Why are we nation building in Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Libya, Yemen?
I want to bring this up.
Afghanistan.
This is really important, especially for the future and the path of war that we could be leading down. China is building a military base 1 mile from the United States military base in Africa right now. And you say, well, okay, well that doesn't sound like the most terrifying thing in the world. And then you realize is that those bases are about, I think it's around 12, but it's definitely less than
like
20
miles.
miles. Yeah, it's less than 20 miles from Yemen. And it has to do with access to transporting, guess what, oil. And China and the United States are going to have military bases on top of each other. Do you understand the implications that could kick off pretty fast on that one? Not good. On top of the fact that we're already on top of Russia right now in Syria. I'm not sure if you saw the story from The Intercept earlier today about how we almost started a war with Iran about a month ago. Like, our foreign policy right now is so bipolar. This is not draining any swamp. This is certainly not, we're going to stop policing the world, we're going to stop wasting our money and blah, blah, blah. Look, Trump says he's not going to go rebuilding countries. Maybe he has no intention of rebuilding countries, but I don't see any pullback from destroying the countries, and that's important.
That's where the big problems come in, dude. You want to get rid of terrorism, you stop destroying countries. It's as easy as that. It's really simple stuff. Terrorism doesn't exist for no reason. Terrorism has a purpose. In fact,
and it doesn't make it right. It's not defending terrorism in any way, shape, or form. But people have to realize there's consequences for their actions.
yeah,
You're going to upset people. And sure, guess what? There's always going to be somebody out there that's mad at you, that doesn't like you. These people have no way of doing anything to your country. And if you bring up 9/11, shut up. No. That's a whole other show, but no.
yeah, dude. It really is a lot simpler than people want to talk about. And before the show, we got our promo meme up. And it, kind of is about refugees and immigrants and stuff. And it's that the Malcolm X quote: "If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing." Of course, a great quote by Malcolm X. It's a few shows late. We could have used it on Malcolm X Day. But that's what's happened after 9/11. They've gotten us to love the people who are oppressing us and hate the people who are being the victims of the guys who are also oppressing us.
That's not just since 9/11. That's not new. It's just the newest version of it.
Definitely not new, because Malcolm X died back, long time ago, decades ago. So this stuff has been going on for decades and decades. It's just super obvious now, at least to us. Unfortunately, it's not obvious to more than half of the country, because half the country thinks refugees are the problem and not looking at the problem of why are these refugees being created? Why are they coming over here? How did this come about? These are the big problems here. Instead, it's like, nope, the refugees are the problem, ban them, and our country and the world is a better place for it. It's just, it really is tough to argue with people like that, because, being a refugee is the hardest thing in the world. That is the saddest state of humanity. You're a person who has had your life destroyed, your home bombed, your family members killed, your children malnourished, your old people hobbled, they couldn't even leave, they just have to stay behind to go die. And this is the low of the low. You can't get any lower than being a refugee.
Think of it like
we're
this.
blaming them as if they are the problem.
Let's put it in context for people to understand. For anybody that watches The Walking Dead, it's like that without the zombies. But that's their life. They're living in this desolate, just survive best you can. And instead of zombies, it's drone strikes and bombs falling on their heads. And, you never know what's around the corner. That's their everyday life. And our tax dollars help fund, basically, quote unquote, the zombies that are coming to attack people. That would be horrible and miserable. We have to, again, this is common sense. We can't stop making everyone in the world our enemy. We can't continue living in fear. We can't continue being scared. If you truly believe you live in the freest country in the world and you truly believe all this stuff, what are you so scared of? If you're so great, you wouldn't live in fear. Because I'll tell you this, name one great person that just lived in terrifying fear. You know what? People that are great don't live their lives in fear. All right? And the same goes for countries. And if you want to be a country that lives in complete fear, you're going to live in a country that is terrified and reacts and does horrible things in the name of fear. Which you can call it the name of freedom, you can call it anything you like, but in reality, it's because you're scared.
Yeah, dude. And you know what? Trump, his only strength is fear mongering. Crime rates and drug addiction rates and refugees, immigrants, bad people, drug cartels.
Fear sells.
That's all he's doing. He's selling fear, and people are eating it up. People are eating it up like a well done steak with ketchup. And you know what? The media, of course, and their fear mongering, and of course, man, sometimes people accuse us of being fear mongers too, but we're trying to prevent wars, not start them. It's a little different. So,
the world's a scary place. It is, okay? We can all admit that. We can all agree to that. Pointing out facts is not trying to push fear on people. It's trying to make you realize the reality of a situation. Now, if I'm trying to make you react offensively in some way out of that fear, That's fear mongering. That's pushing you to do something that you shouldn't do out of fear. But if I'm saying, hey, take a step back, let's view all the options here, let's look at everything and behave like adults and human beings. That's not fear mongering, that's saying grow up. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. We're not trying to sell fear to people. We're not.
No.
We're not. But the thing is that we're worrying about the wrong stuff. We shouldn't be worried about refugees. We should be worried about how they're being created. We shouldn't be worried about deporting immigrants. We should be worried about how and how the economy got screwed over in the first place.
We can't even worry about, we just need to worry about how to fix it. And you have to know how it got screwed up to fix it.
Yeah.
But we can't go back in time. We can't change. Look, and for everybody that goes, but Obama did it, but Bush did it, but blah, 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 did it. It doesn't matter. It's over. It's done. We have to focus on what's here today.
Anybody that says they're going to fix the economy without talking about the Federal Reserve and ending the empire around the world is lying through their teeth. And so when Trump comes around telling you he's going to fix the economy, he's lying. He is. He's lying. He's not going to do it. He's not talking about the Federal Reserve. He's not talking about the $600 billion or more that we're wasting on military. In fact, he's talking about upping the ante. You know, we can't go around spending all that money and then pretend like we're going to fix our economy. To fix our economy, you got to stop stealing money from the people that work here that spend their money inside of this economy. You know, and people don't get that. People say, well, war is good for business and blah, 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 blah. It's good for a handful of billionaires. That's all it's good for. The average working man is not benefited by these huge wars because the money is blown up in bombs. Instead of being used here locally in our economy, it's taken out of your check and sent to Iraq to blow up. Instead, it could be used at a local business or somewhere here. In your neighborhood, in your community, and gone into that business instead of being taken out of your paycheck.
That's one thing I don't want to say I disagree with you on, but I think terrifyingly, the reality is I think our economy runs more off of war than we'd like to admit.
It does, but it doesn't need to.
It doesn't need to. 1,000% it doesn't need to and doesn't have to, but I think it does. And that's what's really scary because I think that we're addicted to it.
It's a permanent wartime economy without us technically being in a war, even though we're in like dozens of wars.
We're addicted to the atmosphere of war and what it does to the economy. You're right.
Yeah, dude. And so, you know, these guys, and this is what Eisenhower warned about, is this permanent wartime economy and the military-industrial complex. Dude, they weren't able to solve it. They weren't able to end it. It was just, it became this monster that never went away. We were warned about it. It kept going. It kept happening, and now we're basically dealing with what has become a permanent wartime economy. And anybody that plays around with it, they get the deep state treatment that Donald Trump just got, and now he's been put in the line. So you don't step out of line from that. The only thing that's going to fix that is a big popular movement that is ready to legitimately overcome all that stuff. And, you know, Obama basically tapped into that movement and hijacked it, co-opted it, and disassembled it in 2008. So you need something similar to that doesn't get co-opted by a Democrat or a Republican. There is a way to do it. It could be done. I think it'll happen sometime, hopefully soon, because if not, we're going to be dealing with a permanent empire that is going to have global repercussions that who knows what.
I think the latter probably.
Thank you all for tuning in. Anti-Media Radio. We'll see you guys Monday.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.
This is Ozzy Skateboard.